Hey there, friends. This is Brandon coming to you from the heart of the Rocky Mountains, crossroads of the West. Today, we're going to be talking about personal projects and how you can start yours and finish yours. But first, I've got a little announcement to make. So, summer's fast approaching, and at least for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere. And what would summer be without running through the sprinklers and barbecuing on the grill and, having popsicles melting down your chin, and of course, long lazy days spent filling your sketchbook. So yes, sketchbook summer is coming back this year, and I think we learned a lot from last year. We've got some new stuff set up to kind of provide better resources this year to kind of help you be successful if you want to take it on. And if you're wondering what sketchbook summer is, well, I just so happen to have made a little video to explain that very question. So yeah, go to the website. You can read up all the details on Sketchbook Summer there. You can sign up for the email list. We're going to be sending out daily emails throughout July that are going to give themes and prompts to help you moving along through the challenge. So now let's talk about personal projects while I draw this. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about personal projects and how you can get a personal project off the ground, get it started, and how you can get it finished. So the impetus for today's video comes from two places. First, I made a video a few weeks back about style and voice, and it occurred to me that as I was responding to comments, that a big part of developing style and voice is creating your own work and really taking on a personal project that 100% comes from you. It's just fantastic exploratory way to kind of get to those things that matter to you and to start to be able to express them artistically. Since then, I also received a really great question on YouTube from David Brow. This is the question: the worst issue of all is probably project managing. Understanding the next step, first step, right steps. For instance, if someone told me how to start and finish one comic, I could do it. You know what it is, working alone, how to work without a team. So I thought this was a great way to frame it. Initially I was going to talk about why a personal project is beneficial, and maybe I'll do that a little bit. But I thought it would be great just to talk about how you initiate a personal project, how you start something, how you finish it. And, it sounds dumb, but that's really all it takes. You need to kind of figure out this skill of starting a project, and you need to figure out this skill of finishing a project. There's kind of a wisdom and a path and a practice to doing those two things. But if you can master those two skills, you can finish a project. And I was thinking it might be best to use my first Green Monk comic as an example of how I was personally successful at initiating and finishing a personal project while I was working full time. Although, to be fair, I didn't have kids at the time. So today I'm actually drawing a character from the Green Monk mini comic. This is Oxbreaker, aka Rusamov. So if you're interested in the Green Monk mini comic, you can pick up a copy via the link in the description. The process for making the comic was fairly straightforward, but the results have been enormous. I was selected as one of YALS's top 10 comics for teens in 2011, on the same list as Doug TenNapel and Raina Talgemeyer, and it was the only self-published book on the list. And I also want to mention that I am continuing kind of some of the giveaways in the build up to the release of Green Monk this fall. So this artwork today, this oxbreaker that I'm drawing, I'm going to give that away to one commenter. And the two rules that I've established are that you need to be someone that has commented on my YouTube channel before, and B, the comment has to actually be an interesting comment. It can't just be like a one-word comment to enter yourself in the drawing. And this drawing is not happening at random. So I'm going to kind of choose someone from the comments that I want to give this to. So anyway, so this little book, this little mini comic that I did really redirected the course of my life. It really focused me towards comics. I was trying to do like a bunch of screenplays and stuff, as I'll mention soon. And so, now this second Green Monk, Blood of the Martyrs, is coming out from Image this year. So it was really crucial in kind of helping me develop my style and voice. But I've also just found that when I really focus on doing stuff that matters to me personally, that it kind of just does better. It sells better. So anyway, so I want to take you through the process of creating the Green Monk mini comic and use it as a step-by-step guide for how you can start your own project. It's of course it's going to work better for you if your project is a comic. If you've got another project that isn't a comic, you're going to have to do some interpretation to fit your project, but some of the stuff's going to be general enough that it should still apply. But here's what I did, and here's why I think it was successful. Keep in mind this is what worked for me. I think most of it will be helpful, but you might have a different personality, so your approach might need to be adjusted. If you want to know more what I mean, go watch my video on the secret to productivity. So with that in mind, let's get into the process. Okay, so first, choose a project. It has to be a project that excites you, represents you, and more importantly, the project needs to be a project you can be proud of. So one of the best guides for deciding what this project will be is to do what I like to call the deathbed thought experiment. And this is a concept I learned from reading Jack Kornfield. Specifically, I think it's in Path with Heart. This is really great in general, an exercise just for getting your priorities straight in life. But the basic idea is that you imagine yourself on your deathbed and you imagine what you will want to be able to say about your life at that point. Take your time, think that through. It's a heavy and kind of dramatic exercise to go through, but I find it to be crucially important to kind of sorting out the crap and going to the stuff that really matters. It helped me to kind of identify, I had kind of a bunch of different projects I was working on. It helped me identify Green Monk as a story that was important to me and that I could feel proud of to leave as my legacy. Second, decide on the scope. If this is your first project, do everything you can to make the scope as manageable as possible. One of the things that was really helpful when I started this project is I had been working for kind of this scrappy, bootstrapping animation studio in Salt Lake City that really taught me the importance of budgeting and how to do a project and not waste time on stupid things. And so it put me in this mindset of scope where I really thought about like what's kind of the minimum I need to do for this project to be successful. So that's a good exercise to go through. I decided to make Green Monk a mini comic so that I didn't have to worry about problems such as panel placement. That was totally just out of the question. I didn't have to focus any time on that. It's one panel a page, which makes the problem way easier. It was a small one-shot story. I'm not trying to tell some sort of epic story that I would never really be able to finish. And last, it was in black and white. I didn't even tone it. So I kept the complications to a minimum, allowed myself to focus on line art and the story, and made the project manageable. It felt like something within my ability to finish. So third, clear the deck. Now that you've chosen a project, put all other projects on hold or just totally kill them. Just cut their throats. Make a folder with them or make some notes or burn them on a barbecue. So maybe you come back later or don't come back later or whatever you want to do. You just need to get those out of the way. You're going to have limited time and limited energy, and you want to be able to focus on making your chosen project great. So you got to limit your distractions. This means putting away all the other projects that want your attention. It may also mean getting rid of other distractions in your life. Do you have other hobbies or non-art projects? Are you trying to renovate your house? Do you do a lot of volunteer work? Say no to enough things that you open up the time you need to do your work. If there are things you can't say no to, do the best you can, or maybe you need to wait a bit for a better opportunity. Having a new child, moving, breaking up, losing a loved one, all take a certain amount of commitment that you can't walk away from. Maybe wait until you really have got the time to commit to the project. Fourth, establish a schedule. Nothing complicated. This doesn't mean breaking down the project into steps and scheduling milestones. This is something I want you guys to avoid if at all possible. Do not get too complex with your planning and your scheduling. All I mean here is you're going to schedule a regular time to work on your project. For me, it was every night after dinner, at least 5 nights a week. If you can't do 5 days a week, do 3 or 2 or just 1. Just find some regular time, make it sacred, and work that time without distractions and be consistent. Get into the flow of it. Once you do it regularly enough, you find the flow and it starts to become relaxing and energizing. How much time you spend each session isn't super important. I spend about 2 hours every night, sometimes 3, but the important thing is to start. If you have a hard time starting, just commit to work for 10 minutes. Set a timer, and if you want to stop after 10 minutes, stop. But if you want to keep working, keep working. Anyone can work for 10 minutes. This step is hugely important as long as you are persistent. Even if you aren't 100% consistent with your schedule, even if you're only 50% consistent with your schedule, but you're persistent with the project, you will finish. Just keep working on it till it's done. Okay, so at that point, those are like the first 4 steps, and those are probably the most crucial steps. Almost any project that you do, whether it's a comic or whatever it is, those are the 4 most crucial steps. And if you kind of stick to those things, you're going to cross the finish line eventually. There's kind of a 5th concept I'm going to be talking about. It's not really a 5th because I have some more steps that are going to be 5th and 6th. But there's an additional concept I think is really crucial, and that's the next action concept. And I'm going to go over that once I finish all the rest of the steps. But I think that's also very crucial, another one of those crucial aspects of this. So now I'm going to get into more of the things that are specific and particular to making a comic, and I'm going to be very simple. So 5th, write a script. So now you've set your schedule, you've got everything else cleared off, and you're going to start actually doing some work. And you have that time set apart. You're going to spend your time doing these tasks. Write a script. Write as much as you feel like you need to get started before you start making layouts. That's going to be different for everyone. I mostly use scripts for figuring out dialogue and kind of having very general story beats. You know, for example, the script for Blood of the Martyrs is 8 pages long, and the final book is 122 pages. So I don't put a ton into my initial script, but it's super important to figure out, you know, those main beats. I'll have to do more in my writing process in future videos. So 6th, thumbnail your comic. And this is when stuff gets tough. You know, make a tiny sketch of every page of your comic, and it's just enough detail for you to know what's going on. And this is really, along with the next step, is the heavy lifting of making a comic. You're figuring out the composition of each panel and how the story is going to flow from page to page or panel to panel, what the pacing is, etc. This is where reducing the scope of the project really came in handy. Thumbnailing and layout is tough, and keeping it to 1 panel per page made it much, much easier. 7th, layout. Again, this is the brain-bleeding, brain-damaged part of making a comic. In the layout stage, you're taking another pass at your thumbnails to refine the details and get closer to being ready to pencil them. Get exact with where the placement of objects will be. Start laying in perspective and figuring out structure. You want to figure out as many problems outside of detail at this point. 8th, pencil and ink your comic. At this point, the job is downhill for me, well, except for color, but we're not worrying about this at this time. Most of the hard work should have been done by the time you get to pencils and inks. Sometimes I do make edits and add pages, but that should only be about 10 to 20% of the time. At this point, my mind is freed up enough that I could even watch TV or listen to podcasts or music while I work, or even have a conversation. With the mini comic, I penciled and inked a page every night. They were much smaller and simpler than a typical comic page, so that made things much easier. 9th, digital layout. I'm going to assume for this process that we're going to skip tone or color because that's what I did on the first book. Check out the link in the description. It's a PDF. look up Jordan Crane's section on print. That's the guide I use for processing my scanned pages digitally. I should have followed it more closely because I scanned everything in at 600 dpi. He's right. Most people won't notice, but if you look very closely, the pixels are visible to the naked eye. I still think it looks all right. Anyway, get a copy of InDesign. If you don't already have it, just get a trial copy. It should last you long enough to get everything dropped in and create your book and export a PDF. Create PSDs of your art and then link those PSDs to your InDesign document. That way you can kind of edit things and get in, and it'll just update the InDesign doc. At this point, you're basically done with your book. You've crossed the finish line. You can export a PDF, and now you have a completed book. The demons in hell are thrashing and wailing that you have completed this sacred task. 10. Share. Don't know how you want to do this, but I do think self-publishing your first book can be a great experience. I recommend not printing more than 100 copies unless you plan on really hitting the convention circuit hard or have a high level of confidence in your work. Nothing sucks more than having an inventory you can't move. Sell 100 books before you start trying to move more. I self-published Green Monk, and this is another one of the cases where simplicity paid off. Black and white is way cheaper to print than color. Each book cost me about $1.90 to print, which then I could sell them for cheap and still make an okay margin. And I really focused on still giving the book as high of a quality feel as possible. So the cover paper is this really great feeling, what do you call it? It's like a cold press, has like watercolor paper, almost like it has like a felt finish. And so even though it was inexpensive to produce, it has like a good quality feel to it. Of course, you could also publish your work online or send it to publishers, but really the hard work is done. You finished something and you should be fucking proud. Pardon my French. You're not going to hear me use that word very often, but after finishing a book is one of the few places that it's appropriate. Okay, 11. Start the next project. Okay, I'm going to be honest. You're probably going to be pumped about having just finished your book, and you're going to want to get out there and promote it, which can be a big chore. So already you're creating a challenge for yourself by trying to start the next project and promote the first book. Maybe give yourself 6 months to just focus on promotion. Do a bit of writing on the side, but mostly focus on promotion. Once the 6 months is up, start the process over. Maybe write a post-mortem about what you learned on the last project and get started on the next. So that is a fairly simplified breakdown of the process, but the beats are all there. I attribute the success of Green Monk to following that process, and I'm confident that it'll at least get you headed in the right direction. One last note. So somewhere along the way, you might get stuck. I almost added this as part of the process, but it can arise at any time during the process, so it really needs to be addressed as it emerges. This is where the crucial concept of next action comes in. I learned about this concept from David Allen's Getting Things Done. I don't use this in his entire process anymore, but next action is still a concept I find incredibly valuable. So the idea is that if you're overwhelmed or confused or not sure what to do next, you identify one specific actionable task that you can do to move forward. The key is to make it specific and doable within a single work session. For example, finish layouts is not a good next action. Draw layouts for pages 4, 5, and 6 is. Be specific and keep the task manageable. One little step to keep moving forward. And I find, again, this is so much more helpful than having a big, complicated plan where you're saying, here's all the pages that need to get done, and here's when they need to get done, and this has to happen, and then this has to happen. If you can just identify the next thing that needs to happen, and every day you work, you identify the next thing that needs to happen, or on a weekly basis, you sit down and say, here are the next few things, the next 5 things, one thing for each business day that needs to happen, you're going to keep moving forward. And that is that's the key thing. That's the crucial thing. And like I said, just to kind of reemphasize, if I were really to push any parts of this process, it would be the first 4 steps plus next action. They also happen to apply to any project you can work on. So making sure it's really a project you want to do, keeping the project manageable, and staying focused and staying consistent are the biggest part of being successful. If you can get those few things right, it can be an empowering and deeply meaningful experience.